Remember, hot and cold are relative terms. You know when water boils, it's very hot, but refrigerant boils at a much lower temperature. So the refrigerant can take on heat, change to a gas, and still seem cold. Again, the reason is because the two substances have different boiling points.
Welcome to Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC Show. We will see you in about 45 seconds or so. Make sure that you are subscribing to our channels on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. Turn on notifications, and we are very excited to be here with you. It's almost time, about 30 more seconds. Make sure to grab your notebook and pen so you can jot down notes along the way, because at the end of the show, you could have an opportunity to ask our guests questions so we can dive a little deeper into these topics. And here we go. Welcome to Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC Show. Well, welcome to the Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC Show Halloween special. Woo! How's everyone doing?
Thou shalt not have CFCs.
Oh, no more CFCs, please. We are so grateful you're all joining us today. We're going to dive deep into the mysteries of A2L and A3 refrigerants, and we're going to help you learn how to teach them in the classroom so that they make sense to people. Hey, Todd, thanks for joining us. Grateful that you are with here today. Yeah, you're going to enjoy this one. Oh, thanks for the little clown emoji. That's great. Woo! All right. Hello, Perla. Glad you're here with us today. Everyone, let us know where you're joining in from, and we're so thankful that you're spending time with us, hanging out on this Halloween day. It comes. Yeah, we're so glad that you're hanging out with us today. Okay, guys, so check this out. Why are we doing this kind of an educational program? So just yesterday, I'm in the airport. I'm on my way back from Texas. I'm standing in line, and I've got my backpack. Hello, Paul. Thanks for joining us again. I got my Did You Know backpack, and a gentleman next to me says, ESCO HVAC Show. I know ESCO. I'm a retired HVAC contractor. I'm like, hey, how's it going? Oh, great. We start talking about, oh, look at him.
Seymour Frost. Eugene couldn't join us. Seymour Frost is here.
He says, so what are you doing? I said, well, we're out learning about new equipment, new refrigerants, and we're talking about the refrigerant transition. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm pretty aware of that refrigerant transition. And man, it's a shame we're putting propane in them new refrigerants. All right, Ty, how many times have you heard that?
Does it fit inside?
Yeah, how do we put that in there? What is propane? That's immediately what I said. I said, well, do you know what propane is? Hey, Froggy Beluga, we're glad you joined us. Well, what is propane? Well, there's one, R290, purified propane, right? What does it look like? What is it made out of? Is it
Tastes like my coffee?
Yeah, but it's a refrigerant on its own. Oh, that's a pretty one with the little snowman.
That is neat.
Yeah. All right. But what about our new refrigerants like R32 and R454B? What are they? What's actually in them, and how can we teach that in the classroom? All right. Well, that's what we're going to dive into. And boy, you got the forefront educators on this one today. So let's dive in a little bit and let's talk about refrigerants. And we're going to show you ways that you can implement the chemistry of refrigerants in the classroom. So let's start with not the beginning, but let's start at an early one, right? Ooh, yeah, you're right. So, Paul, what is a hydrocarbon? Exactly. What does that mean, right? And Froggy, that's what we got. We got a hydrocarbon chain. And we're going to show you what that looks like and like how we can use examples of that. Oh, he's already been using some magic and he disappears too. You got to watch him. He pulls refrigerant out of his sleeves. Well, thank you, Todd. All right, so let's look at this basic compound of R12. Eugene, if we were to say I am working with refrigerant R12, what's actually in R12?
So yeah, so this is a molecule of R12. So R12 started life as a methane molecule. And this
What?
guy here, yeah, this is a methane molecule, this guy. So methane, that's basically our natural gas. And Eugene couldn't be here, so Seymour Frost is
Seymour
here
Frost is
hanging
doing
with
it.
you guys. So methane is also known as R50, and methane is a single carbon atom surrounded by 4 hydrogen atoms. So chemical formula is CH4. And methane onto itself makes a really good refrigerant, but it's also
What's
really
wrong with
really
that?
it's a great refrigerant, but it's also really flammable. So
Well,
this is natural gas. So CH4 is in essence natural gas. So to reduce the flammability of methane, we pluck these hydrogen atoms off, and we replace them with chlorine and or fluorine. So they still maintain good refrigeration qualities and characteristics, but we lower the flammability.
hmm.
So this is what R12 looks like. So R12 still has the base molecule of methane. So it still has the carbon atom surrounded by 4 other atoms, but now we have 2 fluorine atoms, these guys represented by the red balls, and 2 chlorine atoms represented by these green balls. So R12 started out life as methane, CH4,
Hmm.
but became R12 when we halogenated that hydrocarbon. And the term halogenated means we pluck the hydrogens off and we replace them with halogens. So we halogenated the hydrocarbon. So this is R12.
Okay, but they're so similar, but yet, Jason, do those have different flammability properties?
That is a very good question, and yes, they do. When it started life as methane, it was in A3, and when it got to
Highly
the
flammable.
highly, extremely flammable, yes, I mean, it's so flammable up here where I'm at. We bring it into the house and we set it on fire, and that's how we stay
We
warm
intentionally
in the
burn it.
wintertime. Yeah.
Yeah.
As R12, it goes to an A1.
Okay, so like Eugene mentioned, when we halogenate, we remove the hydrogens and we replace them. Now we end up with a new compound that is not highly flammable, moves into our A1 that we're used to using. So when we made those transitions to these synthetic refrigerants in the 1920s, we went to things like R12, which originated from a hydrocarbon to begin with, but it was a highly flammable refrigerant, right?
Yeah. So Clifton, take a look. So this guy, right? This guy is R11. So look, so there's no hydrogen in R11. It's a CFC refrigerant. So this is R11. This was a liquid at room temperature.
Yeah.
And then we have,
Unchillers, some
this
other
is
low temp apps.
R12. So look at the difference between R11 and R12. Basically, there's one less chlorine and one more fluorine. So this is R11. This is R12. And now look, so now we have R12, and then this guy is R22.
Wait a minute. All right. Hold on. You mean we're starting from methane. We take methane, we remove those 4 hydrogens, we halogenate them, and we replace them with 2 fluorine and 2 chlorine, and we get R12, right?
Yep.
Okay, so now we are A1, minimal flammability. We say no flammability is not really such a thing, but it's nearly no flammability, no propagation at all. But we are still in a very similar molecule. Okay, and we start re-looking at R12 and we go, okay, well, R12, it really, the high amount of synthetic chlorine causes ozone depletion, right? Ty, what does that mean, ozone depletion?
That's where we deplete the ozone.
Well,
And this
how
is
about
why you cannot trust an atom, because they make up everything.
that? Poor atoms. I hope there's no atoms on here today.
There are
All
probably
right.
a few.
So what did we do with chlorine, Ty? So we had R12. It was a great refrigerant. It was destruction to the ozone. What did we do with that sucker?
Oh, that sun breaks down that molecule, that chlorine. And when we talk about chlorine, we're talking about a chlorine atom. We're not talking about a chlorine that you put in your pool, which is a different compound of atoms together. It's not the same. So a lot of people get that mixed up. They think that the chlorine molecule is the same as the chlorine in a pool, and there's a difference there, which is a whole nother topic for another day. But these chlorine specific, these chlorine molecules, these individual atoms are then broken apart, and these chlorine atoms are then going through a chemical reaction with the UV rays, and that's breaking down the ozone, which is O3. Like we breathe oxygen, which is 2 oxygen molecules together. When you have ozone, it's 3 oxygen molecules together. So if we breathe oxygen, O2, it's safe. If we breathe O3, it's then poisonous to us. But the O3, the ozone, is actually very important to protect us from those UV rays from the sun coming through. So when we have these going into the atmosphere and it starts having its chemical reaction, it starts breaking down the ozone layer, that was an issue. And back in the 80s, when all these countries were disagreeing and fighting amongst each other, you had the Cold War going on. We had missiles everywhere. We had spies in every single country, even our own allies we had spies in, and nobody agreed on anything. But 100 and something countries came together in 1987 and said, we can agree on this one thing. And so they agreed to reduce that amount of chlorine that's getting up into the atmosphere, and that started the Montreal Protocol and the change of everything we know HVAC.
Okay, so what did we do, Eugene? We had that R12 that had lots of chlorine. You're right, Froggy Beluga. So that's an elemental chlorine. And Alexander, we're so glad that you joined us. Glad he's not an atom. He probably wouldn't have been happy.
I know,
right? All right, so let's take a look real quick. All right, so we got R12. And
here's R12.
Okay.
So 1 carbon atom, 2 fluorine atoms, 2 chlorine atoms.
Uh-huh.
But now take a look at this guy. So this guy has less chlorine than this guy. This is R12.
Yep.
This guy, instead of 2 chlorine atoms, has only 1.
Yep.
And this guy is R22.
What? You mean we simply took out a chlorine, replaced it with a hydrogen, and we got R22? It was that simple?
Well, you know what? It's actually even easier than that, Clifton.
Yeah.
Because remember that both R12 and R22 started life
as methane.
As methane.
Right.
So the hydrogen was already
there in the beginning.
Yeah. So it's actually easier. Instead of replacing 4 hydrogens,
yep,
we actually only replaced 3.
Triple hydrogen.
Now we still have that carbon atom in the center.
Yeah.
We left this hydrogen alone.
Right.
And now we replaced 1 hydrogen with a chlorine and 2 hydrogens with fluorines.
Okay.
So now this is an R22 molecule.
Hydrochlorofluorocarbon.
Yeah. Hydro, chloro, fluoro, carbon.
Jason, what flammability was R22?
It happens to be an A1 as well.
Right. But we still have a problem with it. Ty, what's our remaining problem with our R22, at least in the 1980s and 1990s?
Well, we still end up having that 1 chlorine molecule that's left we have to deal with. And so we're still having an ozone depletion potential. So that's something we need to take. Sure, let's do that. But we have to replace it with something.
All right, Eugene, what are we going to do with it?
So take a look. These two look exactly the same from, right? When you look at it right now.
Okay.
This guy is R22.
With a single chlorine.
We have the chlorine atom.
Yeah.
2 fluorines. But now, look here.
So
now
we left
2 hydrogens in place.
And we only put 2
2
What?
fluorines.
Well,
You know what this is?
Then-
This is R32.
what?
Woo!
Hold on a minute now. Are you saying to go from R22 to R32, all we have to do is have 2 fluorines in there?
Yeah, we had 2
What?
fluorines before. We have 2 fluorines now, but we replace 1 less hydrogen
Uh-huh.
with a chlorine.
Well, that makes sense that would have been the right thing to do, but is there any problems with this, Jason?
Well, this is a higher degree of flammability. It's an A2L. You know, the
'Cause the
more
hydrogen?
the more hydrogen we leave in there, the higher the flammability.
Oh.
Natural gas,
Yeah,
There's
4
4.
hydrogens.
right? CH4,
Yep.
R32.
Half as many hydrogens, maybe not even half as flammable.
Probably
because
1/7.
Yeah, because of the fluorine, it helps keep that flammability down a little bit. Okay, everyone following along? Now, we do want to take a break and show you how we're doing this so you as an instructor can do this in class. Now, there's a variety of ways, okay? So we want you to be thinking about ways that we can do this. One that I like to do live, which is great in the classroom, but doesn't last as long. We can actually use helium balloons. So I simply went to Walmart, picked up a balloon package, picked up a tank of helium, and now we can do this in class with our students, and we can go through this entire transition with our helium balloons. But on these standard balloons, they're actually still somewhat porous. They're not like those Mylar balloons. So if we use a standard balloon, it's only going to last about a day or so. So what Eugene is working with is a really, really cool addition to use in the classroom. And so Eugene is actually constructing these with, let me move over to this one real quick. This is a set. Oh, that's the wrong one, but hello, Ty.
You
And
can also make molecules with Ty.
Exactly.
he's also
So-
really, really good when you're teaching combustion. You can break all the molecules apart. You can see that you have all the same atoms coming in versus coming out. It's a great way to show any of the chemistry with somebody can actually see it. One of the things we have to do is teach the invisible. So when you show these invisible things, these atoms, you can put it together where somebody can see it. And then you can actually see what happens if you break it down and you rearrange the molecules, you get an entirely different component, an entirely different compound. So it's a really great way of teaching so that students can get their hands on something that's normally invisible.
Absolutely. And so Eugene is going to be continuing to work with the manufacturer of these for a potential kit that is specific for what we
And
do
he
in
is
the industry.
genius.
He's
Yeah.
a
So,
genius.
Yeah, if any of you that are listening today are going to be at the iHacky show on November 13th in Pasadena, California, I'm gonna have this all with me. So if
Fantastic.
you want to come by the booth, shameless plug, booth 807 at iHacky.
807, everyone.
So yeah, so we'll be over there, and we're gonna have I'm gonna have a couple of these kits out there, so you guys can play with that.
Hands-on.
So for example, here's propane, and everybody goes, "Well, how much propane is in these new refrigerants?" Well, none.
Only one of them, propane.
Yeah, well,
R290.
propane has propane in it.
That's
Yeah,
right.
right.
That's it.
So what refrigerants such as 1234YF
Yeah.
are they?
Wait. Hold
It's
on.
called propene. So it's a little. It looks like a mother holding up a little kid, but yay.
Okay.
So this is propane, C3H8, 3 carbons surrounded by 8 hydrogens. Am I jumping the gun, Cliff?
No.
You good?
Because, hold on a minute. I want to come back to one here in just a minute. So,
Okay.
no, you're good.
Oh, you want to go to ethane? That's cool.
No.
Oh, there we go.
All
That's
right.
cool.
Oh, hold on.
Oh.
Where'd he go? Slow down, George. All right. 1234Y.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So this is a model of propane. So again, C3H8. So C3, 3 carbons,
Right.
8 hydrogens, right, bonded like this. Well, propene is C3H6 and looks like this. So the difference is there are still 3 carbons,
Right.
but instead of a single bond, between two carbons. This guy has a double bond.
Well,
So there's a double bond right here.
Jason, what would we call that double bond?
It's an alkene.
Yes, it is.
Okay, or an olefin, right?
Yeah.
That's going to come into play here in just a
Yep.
little bit.
So all alkene, just so you know. So
Yeah.
what's up, Kendrick? So all alkene bonds are olefins, but all olefin bonds are not alkenes.
Okay, that's a whole deep
So-
dive, but we may bring that into a class sometime.
Oh man, we could chat about that for 2 hours.
I think you should make a t-shirt.
Instead of C3H8, because of this double bond, that counts as an extra bond.
Yes.
So now propene is C3H6. So there are 3 hydrogen atoms here.
Right.
There's 1 hydrogen atom here and 2 here. So there have to be 4 connections. So between this carbon and everything around it, there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now connected to this carbon, there are also 4.
Right.
1, 2, 3, and 4. And then connected to this carbon are also 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it's C3H6.
Yep. Okay.
So now, just like we swapped, elements around, again, this is propane. So this is a really good refrigerant,
but
it's also really flammable.
Looky there, Ty's got some right now. So when we talk about propane, boom, there's our 290.
So now, what if we plucked some of those hydrogens off that propane molecule?
Yeah. Like we did with 12, 22, and 32.
And now, let's say we plucked 4 hydrogens off that propene molecule,
halogenated them,
and but now we only partially halogenated because
it's
we
not all
hydrogen left,
right?
And we replaced those with 4 fluorine atoms.
Okay,
and this is a molecule of R1234YF.
Okay, so for those who are unfamiliar with 1234YF, Jason or Ty, where do we see 1234YF being used the most?
Right now, we're seeing it in automobiles. It's been there for quite some time. But we're also going to see it as part of numerous blends moving forward. It's going to be almost part of everything that's going to come out from here on out because of it has such a low GWP. And I know I threw a bad word out there. I'm sorry. I won't do it again.
Yeah. No, but so one thing that I'm confused on. So we come up with this new class of HFOs. In the past, we've always used our classification like CFC as chlorofluorocarbon and HCFC as hydrochlorofluorocarbon and HFC as hydrofluorocarbon. But when we utilize this HFO bond, where's the O on the periodic table? Well, it's oxygen.
No.
So we really did
go down that rabbit hole.
but we got to clarify this when we're in classes.
Oh yeah.
So the O is for the olefin bond. So chemically, we still are a hydrofluorocarbon, but now with our synthetic olefin bond, we've created a new compound, a new classification called an HFO, a hydrofluoroolefin. So I like for people to understand what an HFO actually is, and that we really didn't get too far from where we started. Dr. Chuck always tells us that we really don't have a lot to work with, and we have to be creative in the way that we do it and come up with all these new compounds and low GWPs and low or no ODBPs, but we're really working with the same propenes and propanes, and we're just starting with hydrocarbons and trying to come up with some new solutions. And so we're somewhat limited on what we can do, but we want you to understand it so well that you can explain it in your own classroom.
You know what's really interesting, Clifton?
What's that?
Just to throw a little monkey wrench into the discussion. So we have an HFO refrigerant, 1233ZD.
Yes.
Right? Well, just to throw a little monkey wrench in it, 1233ZD is an HFO refrigerant that actually contains chlorine. And 1233ZD has an ozone depletion potential of 0.
Well, how
So
did you?
if you're in your class and you can avoid that discussion, do so. Until your students know that.
All right. For now, more to come.
The minute we say chlorine, we always say,
Mind
oh,
pop.
chlorine depletes ozone.
Right.
But it's that alkene bond that makes the life of that molecule so short in our atmosphere that even though 1233ZD contains chlorine, it exists in our atmosphere for such a short period of time, it does no damage to the ozone layer. So it's actually kind of interesting. So everything is crystal clear.
Yeah.
Until it's not.
Okay. All right. So we're going to confuse things a little bit more. Actually, we're going to clarify. All right. So Eugene, so we've got our HFOs, those new HFOs.
But hang on, we got 125. So let's talk about that one.
Yeah. So I want to help people understand, because remember, let's think about our evolution here for a minute, right? Yeah, Todd, 134.
This is a joke, I think.
What did 1234YF say to the car air conditioner? Oh my goodness, I can't wait for a joke from the audience. Yeah, let her roll. Let everybody think about that. If you got an idea, throw it in.
Don't worry, I'm here to GWP down your emissions.
Oh, you down with GWP?
Yeah, you know me.
So wait a minute. Wow, what is that? Should we talk about that?
What's that?
Those 3 letters, GWP.
Absolutely, we need to. So let's go back. This kind of falls into our evolution of refrigerants and what these HFOs, why they're important with our refrigerants going forward. So remember, when we were looking at our refrigerants, I went one too far. When we're looking at our refrigerants, we were working with R12 that had chlorine and fluorine. And this bond, these singular bonds of chlorine that when released to the atmosphere, were able to make it into our stratosphere and destroy ozone. So we had our ozone depleting potential coming from our chlorine in the way that it destroys ozone molecules. And the fluorine, Jason, you want to run with that?
What about it?
So our fluorine is a greenhouse.
Oh, if you want to get into that, yes. We're going to discuss trapping heat. Yes. Okay. So as Ty covered on the ozone depletion potential, what the chlorine gases tend to do to the ozone, one of the other effects we're having is trapping heat. It's a greenhouse gas. So it traps heat in our atmosphere, makes it a little bit hotter up there. The more of it that escapes. So GWP... we use as a baseline for measuring CO2 because there's a lot of CO2. So that has a GWP of 1. So if I were to tell you that R32 has a GWP of 676, what is that, Clifton? I mean, is that dollars? Is that degrees? Is that 676 seconds? I mean, for real. What is that number? What does it mean?
It's a potential for warming of the globe, as Eugene would instruct us. So it must be a comparison to something else. Would it be the CO2 you're talking about?
You are correct.
Okay.
So there's 2 ways to look at this. You could say that R32 has 676 times the capacity to trap heat than CO2 by itself.
Okay.
Or you could say that leaking 1 pound of R32 is the equivalent of leaking 676 pounds of CO2.
Okay.
They are identical.
Okay. So now that we're on the GWP discussion, so Ty, when we started with 12 and we took and we only replaced one of those hydrogen atoms with chlorine instead of the 2, which got us to 22. That reduced our ozone depleting potential. I'm going to assume that our global warming potential was modified a little bit, but we still had a lot of fluorine in there. So what happened with our global warming potential? Do we still have a lot of global warming potential in that R22?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And so, hello, how are you doing, Zachariah? We're glad that you're joining us here. So when we went from 12 to 22, we lowered our ozone depleting potential. We lowered that GWP potential because there was GWP. We don't talk about GWP in 12, but there was, right? Because of our flooring. So when we went to R32, Jason, you just mentioned that we have now removed the ozone depleting potential and our global warming potential went down on that cylinder of R32 that Ty has right here, but our flammability went up, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so Ty, what flammability class is that R32?
It is an A2L, A being non-toxic, 2L for the lower flammability, a mildly flammable refrigerant.
Okay.
And I will tell you, generally speaking, as that GWP comes down, flammability does tend to go up.
Okay, so is there anything we can do to counteract that flammability? Because remember, this was like 1964, we patented R32. It's not a new refrigerant. We were actually considering this refrigerant in the 1990s, but when we got to this point, we went, man, we got rid of the ozone depleting potential. We got our global warming potential down. But as Ty just said, and Jason said, our flammability went up. But here in the United States, we said, I don't want to deal with that flammability.
We couldn't at that time. It wasn't in the building codes. We didn't have standards for it. We had to do something.
So, Eugene, is there ways that we can combat that flammability of R32 to help change that for us a little bit, maybe make it a little bit more manageable? Are there any other refrigerants out there that could help us out?
Well, take a look. So we looked at methane, and we looked at propane,
Yep.
and then there's this guy, right? And this guy is ethane. So this guy is C2H6. So similar to propane, which was C3H8. It's the same type of string, but we only have 2 carbon atoms surrounded by 6 hydrogens. So we've already been working with ethane-based refrigerants because maybe, again, ethane, really, really great refrigerant, but highly flammable.
It's one of our original refrigerants from the mid 1800s.
Yeah. So now so you've heard of 134A.
Yeah.
And this is 134A. Our 134A is an ethane-based refrigerant.
Okay.
We've halogenated that molecule by plucking 4 hydrogen atoms off and replaced them with fluorines. This is tetrafluoroethane, more commonly known in the real world as R134A.
And with all them fluorines, it probably had a fairly high global warming potential. So
But also, again, we had some hydrogen.
Yeah.
But now take a look at this guy. This guy looks almost exactly the same, but the difference is there's 1 more fluorine than this. So this guy has 5 fluorines. This guy has 4 fluorines. This guy has 2 hydrogens. This guy has 1 hydrogen. So this is R125.
Which should probably have a fairly high global warming potential with all that fluorine.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? If you take this R125 and remember before we were talking about R32?
Yeah, that mildly flammable refrigerant we were not ready for.
Yeah. So if you take equal quantities of R125 and R32, notice these are both HFCs, hydrofluorocarbons, and we mix these in equal quantities, this is what we call R410A.
Get out of here.
So there are a lot of people. So there are a lot of people that are afraid. Say, "Oh well, I'm a little reluctant to use R32."
Yeah.
But we've been working with R410A for almost 15 years, if not more.
Yeah.
So now picture this. There you go. So now picture this. This is R125 and R32, and now in a lot of our new equipment, this is what we're using.
The R32 on its own.
But now, listen, what's even neater?
Yeah.
I showed you before 1234YF.
Yeah. I remember that one that we're using in automotive quite a bit. Yeah.
The 1234YF, if we use 1234YF in conjunction with R32. This is our R454 series of refrigerants,
Is it
454A,
really
B,
that
and C.
easy? That's all.
Kind of neat, right?
I can't believe that. And we can
Oh, you
demonstrate.
can believe it.
It's right in front of me. I have to believe it now.
You
We're all
mesmerized us
connected.
with balloons at all these trade shows that we did over the last couple of
That's right.
It's like extended family. They're all related. They're all cousins.
Exactly. And the most interesting thing is there is no chemical propane in any of those A2Ls, 1234YF, 32, 454B. Wow. Here's okay. Well, Todd, we gotta get you in here and dad jokes. All right. Hold on a minute. Hold on. Everybody ready? I've been waiting to use this for a while. Go find it.
All right, let's.
ACR dad jokes. Okay.
I'm listening, but I can't hear what they're saying to each other.
All right. So what did R32 say to R125?
Drum roll.
Sorry, but I need to be single. R410A can keep you company. I love it.
Do you really want to bring Todd in here? I don't know.
Yes, we do. Absolutely.
We love Todd.
We love Todd.
Todd and I are like this.
Yeah. Oh, you're that close.
This one's me.
Oh. Oh, Todd, we love you so much. We can enjoy this because we know you're enjoying it too, my friend. All right. So when we talk about this, Eugene, so now we have our molecule set that we can construct in the classroom to show everyone the differences between methane, propane, 1234, 12, 22, 32, 454B, 410A, a variety of different ways. Another one that I like to use myself to be able to demonstrate this. Let me see if I can grab that additional camera here. I also have in the lab, I don't know if anyone's seen these sitting on some of the stands at conferences and expos that we go to, but I like to also take styrofoam balls that I've gotten off from Amazon. You can buy a whole cluster of them, and then I'll just simply paint them the different colors, and then I'll use my skewer sticks painted with different colors to be able to form my elements. So as we're discussing building, like say that olefin bond, we can actually construct those in the classroom and allow the students to start building the molecules themselves and use that as an actual competition, a test. We can use it as a way to verify that they've learned this in class and that they are following along and they're understanding these transitions, because it does make a lot of help for us when we can explain things physically. We can use balloons, we can use the connectors, but what's most important is for them to understand what chemicals are being used and reasons that we change some of our practices in the industry. If we look at refrigerants like that R410A.
Let me hold you there for a second, Clifton.
Yes, please do.
Oh, can you go back to R32 for a second?
Yeah, let's see.
When we were discussing that R32, we said that the GWP, the global warming potential of R32, was 676. And you said earlier, Eugene, that if we took equal parts 125 and R32 and we put them together, we ended up with R410A. Is that correct?
Uh-huh.
That was pretty easy. But what happened to the GWP when we brought in that R125 to make 410A?
It went way back up.
Right.
Higher than
R32 by itself was 676. And when we brought in that R125, it went all the way up to 2088 or 2090.
So even more of a reason to find something better to use than R410A because that high global warming potential.
And this is why we're seeing this phase down, because that I mean, if we look at 404A, it's 3,920.
Yeah.
I mean, that is extreme. And that's why we're starting to see these go away.
It also did some changes to our techniques in the field. When we went with the blended refrigerant, does anyone in the audience remember? I mean, there were two things that were of concern when we went from 22 to 410A. One of them was just a misperception. Oh, it's got such high pressure, everything's going to blow up, right? We all heard that one. but it did make a change to the way we charged refrigerant into a system. Ty, can you tell us what changed when we went from our single compound refrigerant R22 into a blended refrigerant like R410A?
Well, yes, when we use a blend like the 400 series, or if we have an uppercase A, that's also a blend, not to be confused with a lowercase a, which is an isotope. But we have this uppercase A, or the 400 series, that's a blend of refrigerant, meaning more than one in here. Like if you have water and sugar, there's two different things in there that make that up. And if you've ever seen, sometimes you'll have if you have tea, you'll see the sugar will settle to the bottom. So if we're taking this refrigerant out, if we want to take it out in a liquid form, so we make sure we have the same amount of refrigerant, 50% and 50% in the case of 130, in case of 410A. So if we turn the tank upside down without a dip tube, now we know if we take this out as a liquid, we'll have the equal mixture of both of the refrigerants. Now 410A had such a small glide, it was very unlikely to have fractionation. But as we have more and more glides and refrigerants, the wider that glide is, the more likely, the more of a potential, the more risk that we have for fractionation. But either way, anytime that we have a blend, we can take it out of the tank in a liquid form and reduce all those potentials for having a fractionation, meaning we could possibly end up with more of one refrigerant than another. And for example, where we have this uppercase A, 410A, that means we have a 50% mixture of R32 and the other one,
125.
And so if we have 410B, it still has those same two mixtures in it, but it's a different percentage. So it's an entirely different refrigerant with an entirely different temperature and pressure chart. And if you'll see, we have now today 454B, but there's also 454A, 454C. There's several blends of those refrigerants that have the same exact mixtures that make them up, but they're different percentages of them. When we have more R32 versus a different one of the other mixtures, so it just changes the percentage up, which change the entire temperature and pressure chart of all those refrigerants. So we want to make sure we take all these blends out as a liquid to reduce the potential for fractionation.
Okay, well, let's talk about our two most common refrigerants, right? So let's talk about going forward. R410A has been phased out. We just came back from a couple of our manufacturers, and one manufacturer in particular, there were no R410A equipment being manufactured on the line. It is all converted over to R32 for the residential split systems. So when we look at our two refrigerants, we're going to have, let me back up real quick. Let me back up to show R32. So if we are going to be working with some manufacturers, we could have R32. Now remember, it's not consistent across the industry. Some manufacturers will be using R32, some will be using R454B. So if I look at R32, it looks a lot like R22, like we discussed. So how would I charge R32?
Well, you can charge as a liquid or a vapor.
The same way you did R22.
Sure. Hey, JD.
Yeah, just keep in mind it's a single compound refrigerant. So if you have a refrigerant that's a single compound, R32, you can charge it as a liquid, as a vapor. It's still going to be R32. But again, even with R125 and R32, this is 410A.
Yeah.
Right? If you charge as a vapor, you could fractionate, but as Ty mentioned, the temperature glide is so low that it doesn't really matter.
Right. It was for a period of time when we first started talking about 410A. One manufacturer in particular, part of their warranty process, if you had a leak in an evaporator coil or a condenser coil, and it was between the lower third and the upper third, if you had a leak in that coil on one of those horizontal tubes, they actually provided you with up to 5 pounds of refrigerant as warranty because they were concerned with that fractionation. And we actually do another show. I'll put a link to that where we cover fractionation and glide in better detail. But as we learned over time, there wasn't much of a difference. And so we actually moved away from that, and it wasn't as much of a concern. But what about our R454B?
Clifton, I just want to clarify real quick.
Yes.
What I held up before was actually 454B. So when I was talking about 410A and I said R32 and 125,
Yep.
then it's actually these two guys.
Don't worry, I'll
Maybe
cut
a
them
lot
out.
of you didn't notice, but I just want to clarify. So this is R125, looks like a little poodle,
Yep.
and this is R32. So these are two HFO refrigerant, HFC refrigerants, again, 125, 32. And now talking about R454B, that's the blend of R1234YF, that's this guy, with that double bond, and the R32. Just wanted to clarify, Clifton. Sorry.
Sure. No,
Let me throw this in there too.
Yeah.
When we put R32 and R125 together, we got 410A. And the GWP went through the roof, correct?
Yeah.
When we put R32 and 1234YF together, the GWP comes all the way down to 466.
Okay, so that makes sense. That's a reason
because 1, 2, 3.
A lot of people ask, well, if 32 is an A2L and 454B is an A2L, and 32 is a much lower global warming potential and no ozone depleting potential compared to earlier refrigerants, why did we add 1234YF to R32?
To bring the GWP down.
Well, tell me about that, Ty.
Oh, just to clarify here, we have 3 of the chlorine molecule, or 3 of the carbon molecules together, so that was a C3, correct?
Yes, on the
Okay.
1, 2, 3,
So
4,
what is a C3PO?
Oh. Where's that
I
R2?
just like to throw in a Star Trek joke every once in a while.
Star Trek? You go, Ty. Oh man, this is going off the rails really.
But it's so much fun. Oh, well, here's a good question and comment for the audience. Just came through, and I imagine that is Howard that brought that one.
Of course it is.
So this is not exactly a new refrigerant. When we talk about refrigerants, trivia question. When did HVAC Excellence first start discussing the next generation of refrigerants? People will be thinking about that for just a little bit because we are calling these new refrigerants and next-gen refrigerants. As you're seeing, R32 is not a new refrigerant. The R1234YF is a newer refrigerant on the scene, but we actually discussed this way back in 2010 conference. So one of the reasons that we have our conference is to make sure that you and the entire industry is staying up to date with what changes are happening around us. And so we encourage all of you to make sure that you join us at the 2025 National HVACR Education Conference. We're going to be diving deeper into some of these topics. We're going to be covering a lot of new transitions in our industry, both technological and refrigerant wise. We'll be talking about the refrigerant transition in the commercial as well as the residential and light commercial sectors and some of our industrial refrigerants. So a lot of topics to dive into in that. Now, another thing I did want to bring up while we've still got everyone hanging in with us is what about resources for this, right? When we start talking about all of this, we had brought up this before a little bit about our periodic table. This is actually available to you for the classroom. So anyone that is looking for a free digital download of this, you can actually go into our e-learning network, and I have a couple of QRs that I'll throw in here for you. So there's a free digital download for the entire periodic table of elements chart. There's also a free digital download for the temperature pressure chart. Compare the refrigerant pressures between R22, R32, R454B, and R410A. And of course, you can always buy these at the ESCO store as well. So we want to make sure that you have all of the resources that you need in the classroom. Now, one thing, I guess I almost forgot where I was going. So Ty, when we're talking about R454B, we discussed that R32 is very similar to R22 in the fact that it is a single compound refrigerant. But when we move into R454B, how would we charge an R454B refrigerant?
Well, since it's a 400 series, meaning it starts with a 4, and it has a capital letter at the end, which also means it's a blend, we want to make sure we charge it as a liquid form. We take it out of the bottle as a liquid form. Now, to get it into the system when it's running, we have to do that into the suction side. So we want to throttle it in, very small, slow little bursts. So even though it's coming out of the tank as a liquid, we want to make sure it's a vapor before it gets over to that vapor compression system. And then, so by taking it out as a liquid, we know we don't have fractionation. By doing it in very short little bursts, we make sure it's a vapor before it gets to that the compressor. And then, of course, if the system is off and not running, we can charge that liquid directly into the liquid line, and that way we don't have fractionation either.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And yes, Todd, proctors do get a discount for those materials on our e-store. And you can find that at escogroup.org and then go to the bookstore.
Clifton, can I just talk real quick about those little letters after the HFOs?
Yeah, yes, sir. Absolutely. You can.
Okay. Yeah. Just really, really quickly, the 1234 YF. The YF actually means something on these refrigerants. So that first letter, the Y, that Y tells us what element is connected to this guy, which is called the central bond.
Okay.
So here we have 3 connections to the carbon. Here we have 2 because of that double bond. And then this guy is the central one. So the Y in 1234YF means that this is a fluorine atom. If that letter is not a Y, but let's say it's an X, it could be an X, a Y, or a Z.
Yep.
If it's an X, that means that this element is chlorine. If it's Y, it's a fluorine. If it's a Z, it's a hydrogen.
Huh.
So
I did not know that.
So you'll have like 1234YF. The
Yeah.
Y means this guy's fluorine.
Yep.
And the F means that both of these guys, this is called the methylene bond, that double bond, that alkene bond. And then that letter, that last letter on that series refrigerant is either going to be an A, a B, a C, a D, an E, or an F. If it's an A, then these are both chlorines.
Yep.
If it's a B, one's a chlorine, one's a fluorine, doesn't matter which one. If it's a C, they're both fluorines. If it's a D, one's a hydrogen, one's a chlorine. If it's an E, one's a hydrogen, one's a fluorine. And if it's an F, like in 1234YF, they're both hydrogens. So for 1233ZD, like we said, this central connection, right, element is a hydrogen, but because it's a D, 1233ZD, one of these is hydrogen, and one of these guys, is actually a chlorine atom.
I am so glad.
Well, now we have the Y of YF.
That's right.
There you go.
And see, I was doing chemistry back in high school. All these Fs that I had, see, I was just ready for HVAC. The HFOs.
You know what? It's funny because high school, I was a straight A student. Absent, 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 absent.
Well, when you come to the conference in Las Vegas, you can learn about these HFOs. And if you like outdoor stuff like me, you can go out towards Area 51 and you might be able to see some UFOs.
That's exactly right. That's a great segue. That might have to be our adventure this year. Hello?
Crickets. Uh-oh. I think
No, this is all fantastic stuff.
I think I had everybody running for the door on that one.
I know, but there's a lot of people still here, so they're obviously intrigued. So we invite any questions, any comments that you have while we're right here. Eugene, I'm so glad you explained it, because I remember sitting through your class on the chemistry breakdown, especially of the Ys and of the A, B, C, D, E, F, and it didn't really capture. I didn't quite see it. And now that you're utilizing the molecules, it makes it so much easier, which is why we're encouraging you to bring chemistry into the classroom. We work with every aspect of the sciences, and chemistry is at the heart, but yet we never discuss exactly what that is. Uh-oh. What's coming?
And as we talk about the pressures and the temperature and pressures, which is important,
yeah,
we do not charge by pressures. We have to look at superheated vapor to the compressor on the suction side. We look at the subcooled liquid on the liquid side. So regardless, people ask me all the time, well, what about the pressures? Pressures mean nothing. I need to convert that into a saturated temperature. And then we also need to have the superheat and the subcooling. So when somebody's like, my pressures, I'm like, no, evil, bad. We need superheat and subcooling at minimum. Airflow, superheat, and subcooling. The indoor evaporator temperature will be in relative to the return air temperature, latent and sensible, and then also outdoor, The outdoor temperature will depend on the SEER rating and the temperature of the air coming into the outdoor unit. It all ties together. So the pressures are going to change with temperature, airflow, all the above. So superheat, subcooling, airflow, ABCs, airflow before charge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you know what? What's interesting? If you go into the store, see, this is just some spray adhesive.
Yep.
Take a look at the labels and see what's in it, just to get an idea of what we're working with on a daily basis. Because this is spray adhesive, and yes, there's propane in here, and there's difluoroethane, which is R152.
Mm-hmm.
So the next time you're in the supermarket or you're shopping and you're trying to keep busy, look at the labels. If anything has a little spray button on the top, there is a propellant in there. And chances are, I mean, I'm aiming it at my face, which is not probably the greatest thing to do.
You got to make a great video.
Oh, it would be a great video.
All right, you got your glasses on.
But
You're
you know,
okay.
yeah, if you see something with a little spray nozzle on it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's got a propellant in it.
Mm-hmm.
So just look at what's inside. You might surprise yourself. And yeah, you know, Clifton mentioned our conference, but about over 10% of our classes are actually geared toward A2L refrigerants. So we have over 90 sessions, and right now I think about 11 of them are geared toward A2L refrigerants, the refrigerant transition. So yeah, no, we got you covered.
Absolutely, we do. We're here to provide you with resources. You know, I keep coming back to that periodic table of elements, but just because it helps us clarify, you know, what chemistry we use. If you look at that table, we highlighted those 4 elements. Up at number 1 is hydrogen, number 14, carbon, number 17, fluorine, or number 9, I'm sorry,
17.
cut.
Yeah,
Number 1, hydrogen. Number 6, carbon. Number 9, fluorine. And number 17, chlorine. Those 4 elements comprise the refrigerants that we work with. Besides our CO2 and ammonia, these are the elements that make up our industry. So we may think that chemistry is not crucial, but it is absolutely important. And if we can show this, especially to our program chairs, especially to our administration, that, you know what, we actually teach a lot of chemistry in our classroom because our world of refrigeration is revolving around the manipulation of chemicals created from elements off from the periodic table.
Ty, what kind of system can you charge with that tank that you're holding? I think Ty froze. Everybody
freeze on us.
Is Ty just not moving, or did he freeze?
I couldn't. You cut out for a second. I was saying all these are man-made chemicals, so we still have to recover all of these refrigerants. The only exception for recovering is such as R290, a hydrocarbon, or CO2, which is a high grade. It's not just simply the CO2 out of the air, but it's a high grade. That's what they're using in commercial supermarket refrigeration now. And there's a lot of topics now on CO2, but all these other chemicals we talked about, all the way from R12 to 32, even though they're new and they're considered more environmentally friendly, they're still man-made chemicals. So we still have to recover these chemicals, and we send it off to a factory to be either reclaimed or destroyed or made into something else.
Absolutely. There was a comment that just came in about the recovery of refrigerants, and really depends on the classifications of refrigerants. And we'll talk about that in more detail diving forward. That's actually a full show right there that we probably need to cover a little bit better. And when we talk about things like our hydrocarbons, they are currently exempt from recovery. So a lot of interesting changes in the world of refrigerants, and it's important for us to all be aware, to understand, because remember, we didn't do a lot of changes in refrigerants for decades. Now we're going through a lot of changes, both in residential, like commercial, as well as in our industrial sectors. So there's a lot of things to learn about, and if we can see what things are made out of, it'll be easier for us to explain to others.
Good point.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Ty, Eugene?
I think we got it.
I think we're there. Fantastic. All right, everyone. Well, we are so grateful that you joined us again on this Halloween special of Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC show. Sorry that Jason couldn't get back in with us. He was having some network difficulties, as we tend to encounter in these live productions, but we're grateful that he was here for that time, and very grateful for Eugene and Ty for joining me. And we look forward to seeing you all again next week on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC show. Bye, everybody.
Care.
Where'd it
Happy
go?
Halloween.